Why is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
We need to record an intro for this very special episode,
Yeah, we
which
do.
I feel like we also need to, or I need to stop beginning our very special episodes by saying we need to record an intro for our very special episode.
But I mean, if I don't have direction, how can I not
I
follow
know.
it?
We just want to say to our listeners, happy Life Day
Happy
to you
Life
and
Day.
yours. And we will be giving you the full interview of our conversation with Bruce Vilanch sometime in the new year, but we couldn't let this important celebration go by without marking it in some way.
Sure.
And it's been such a crummy year. I feel like you need to celebrate what you can and lean into the good things. And talking to Bruce Vilanch about writing for Wookiees is something that I think we all need these days.
I agree. And reminiscing about the virtual reality with Dionne
That's
Warwick.
true. Yes.
We didn't even get to be Arthur.
I think it was Diane Carroll, wasn't it?
Diane
Not
Carroll. It was
Deanne?
Diane Carroll. It was. Star of Dynasty.
Oh, here we go. But as we wrap up the year, we would like to say to all of our listeners, thank you so much. Because if you don't listen to the stupid show, we can't do the stupid show.
True.
And that's not a explaining math to you so you can then retrofit that where we go off the air.
No.
I noticed the other day we have like 10 listeners in Dublin. Do you know someone in Dublin? Please say no. Because I like to think it's Bono,
It
The
is.
Edge, Paul McGuinness, and like the ghost of Oscar Wilde
It's
are all
definitely
listening to
no.
the show.
Oscar Wilde is absolutely into our show. Oscar Wilde would be our biggest fan, and I have zero doubt that Larry Mullen Jr. would love our show.
That's true. So Larry and the rest of your friends, thank you so much for listening. We love all of our listeners equally, but if you're one of these 10 folks in Dublin, you're doing the Lord's work.
Have a
So
pint
thank
for
you.
us.
Yes. Happy Life Day, happy whatever you're celebrating. And you probably won't be going over the river through the woods this year, but maybe sit by your tree, just stare out the window, take some time, and hopefully hearing us talk about Wookiees is a little break from everything.
Should
So
be.
thank you. It should be, right?
Right. It should drown out
Yeah.
something.
Exactly. So thank you. We love you. And I guess all I have going through my head is drive safe, which is really a bad thing to tell a bunch of people on lockdown.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
That's it, I'm turning back. I know your family's waiting. I know it's an important day. All right, we'll give it a try. I'll set your coordinates. Won't jump far. I'll get you back there in time, pal. Trust me. Our only hope now is to outrun that Imperial garbage scow, though. I'm going to Lightspeed. That's the spirit. You'll be celebrating Life Day before you know it.
Happy Life Day to you and yours.
Thank you so much. Is it coming up? Tomorrow's Festivus, which is what George was hoping Life Day would become. Festivus for the rest of us.
Yeah.
But it was not to be. However, there is May the 4th, which has kind of become Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
So that may be edging towards what George was hoping to have accomplished.
What was that like? I mean, it's such legend now, that show, that special. And you were one of 4 people writing on it, is that correct?
Sounds right, yeah. Pat and Lenny and Ken and Mitzi and me, I guess. And then there may have been somebody else who I don't remember. I better look up the IMDb credits. It was a small and hearty band.
And it's a very interesting group, cast of characters on screen as well. What do you remember about putting that show together?
Well, first of all, it was 1978, and so we were all chemically altered. And if we'd known what we were doing would be spoken of 45 years later, we would have paid closer attention. But people hate when I say this, but there were a lot of people at the time who did not think Star Wars was all that much. It had not become the internet, the Scientology of nerds, which it subsequently became, because it was one movie, and he was preparing to shoot the Empire. Mm-hmm. So this was a device on his part to stir the pot, to sell toys, action figures, and to keep the movie in the public zeitgeist, because it had been released 18 months before. So for CBS, it was a way to latch on to a brand that was big. I mean, it had demonstrated an audience, and it was also a way to throw a lot of CBS stars on a television show that would get a lot of eyeballs looking at it, and they would cross-promote the shows that those CBS stars were on. So it was to everybody's benefit to do the show, but nobody ever thought we were creating high art or low art, for that matter. The show it got the usual mix of reviews, and the numbers were okay. They weren't brilliant, but they were okay. It was the weekend before Thanksgiving on a Friday night, and they were all right. And it went away, and discovered years later, 20 years later maybe, when the internet took hold, and by that time Star Wars had become a quasi-religion, and people who were devoted to it would comb the internet looking for any tidbit, and they found this special, and they couldn't believe it because because it's such a piece of shit. They couldn't believe that George had actually been involved with it. They thought somehow we were, Raiders of the Lost Lucas. We'd come in and we pilloried this thing. And when they found out, of course, that it was his idea and that he was intimately involved at the beginning, they felt betrayed. So George got really put upon a lot when this thing happened, and he tried his best to suppress the whole thing. And we just looked at it, from afar, and nobody really cared, except that every time he did a subsequent Star, he always said that he had 6 movies he was going to do, and it was a little hiatus between the first 3 and the second 3. But he keeps churning stuff out. Every time there's a new Star Wars thing, the old show surfaces, and he will never own it, but he kind of now just ignores it. I mean, they even let the Lego people do a Star Wars special, because actually I don't know how much because it's a Disney thing, and he's now sold himself to Disney. So when Disney said we want to do this, I'm sure he didn't stand in their way. But of course, that because it's not a remake of the special, but because it's another show with the name Star Wars Holiday Special, the old show comes up again, once again, and here we are talking about it. So if I'd known, as I say, going into it, that this is going to be what I would be talking about 45 years later, I really would have. I would have been, I would have had more caffeine when I was there. I would have taken deeper, darker notes. But it was. I mean, I did a lot of. I'm writing a book actually now about how I wrote the worst television shows in history and lived, and it was one of those shows. It was another one of those star-studded specials with a gimmick that were inane, but it was a 3-network town at the time. Maybe Fox had started, I'm not sure, but so it was a common kind of thing on TV, and it's often when I talk to people who were not born yet, maybe you two are in that group. It's unusual. You what?
I was there. I watched it when it aired.
Yeah.
Well, then I mean, there were a million variety television shows, and every night there was something, and there were these specials that to attract an audience that wasn't normally watching those shows. So it was just another one in those lines of things. I thought it was particularly kind of ridiculous. And what made it even stranger is George had told me he had 10 stories that he had written, original Star Wars stories, and he was going to film 6 of them. And before he developed in other areas. And this was the last story that he hadn't developed. He actually had developed Boba Fett as a full-length animated movie that he could not get anybody to do, believe it or not. And there was this story, and he sold this story to CBS as a variety special because they pardon me, sniffed around and discovered that CBS was interested. So he sold it to them. And I don't think he watched variety television. George never struck me as that kind of guy. I don't think he was looking at like Wayne Newton at SeaWorld or some of my bigger triumphs. He was, I don't think he was aware of what a network variety special was. I believe that he thought that he had given them an outline for a show, an original musical. And there was going to be a lot of music in it. And if, in fact, that was his intention, it was bizarre that the story he sold them involved as leading characters the Wookiees. Because the Wookiees don't sing, the Wookiees don't dance. The Wookiees don't do acrobatic. The Wookiees don't make any sound that sounds like English or any other known language. It's just lots of, and so you have to have somebody translating because back then you couldn't use subtitles. Subtitles were anathema. It was widely felt the audience would never read subtitles. Now, if you go see one of the later Star Wars movies, they're 2/3 subtitles. Lupita Nyong'o doesn't say a single word of English in any of those Star Wars movies that she's in. She speaks some kind of gobbledygook, and there are subtitles. And so the world has changed in that regard. So we were working in a old school variety show situation with this thing that was certainly not going to bend to our will. I mean, we had to serve whatever it was that was there. So there was an uneasy combination of what will the Star Wars stuff be and what can we put in that will be variety TV that will serve the God that we were worshiping at the time. And so it felt crazy every day because, you walk in and you say, okay, we got the silverback Whoopi, Chewbacca's father, puts on the virtual reality helmet, and what does he see? What is his fantasy?
Oh, yeah.
And so, that was the kind of task that we had. But I will say, George had read a lot of science fiction, and I did love the virtual reality helmet. Nobody had done that before. It had appeared in a bunch of science fiction novels that I'd read when I was a kid, but I think he'd read them too. And it's a great gimmick, but finding out what we were going to put in there was trial and error. So is that a short enough answer to your question?
Very much so, yes.
Yes.
So I guess the question then becomes, who's the easier person to write for, Chewbacca or Donnie and Marie?
Well, people have often said to me, the kind of stuff I do, it's kind of like Shakespeare, he wrote Hamlet and he wrote the Comedy of Errors. And they say, well, you're comparing yourself to Shakespeare. I said, no, I would never do that. But he never had to write a 2-spot for Donnie and Marie. He had Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but that was another story. Right. It was much easier writing them. The obstacles there were that they were very young. Marie turned 18 in the course of the show, and that was when she was allowed to take a more adult direction. But you have to understand, we were dealing with the Mormon cabal, I call them. They were the Mormons ran the show because the Osmonds are very devout, and they answer the Salt Lake City, and everything had to go through the elders. And their list of things that Mormons can't do is shocking. I mean, I'm Jewish, and the list of things I'm not supposed to do is pretty lengthy, but it's nothing compared to the Mormon list. The Mormon list is longer than any red carpet you've ever seen. I mean, we couldn't say coffee break. They don't drink coffee. They don't take any caffeine. People on that show would take milk breaks. I mean, you can't say coffee break or tea break. There's no tea time. I mean, it was a staggering bunch of things that could not be used. So we were always working around what they would let us do. So it was very, it was all very much. I mean, I tell a story which is absolutely true. I was friendly with Michael Feinstein. I'm still friendly with Michael Feinstein. And at the time, he was working for Ira Gershwin, the great lyricist. And I got to know Ira a little bit towards the end of his life. And a part of Marie's kind of, coming out, getting older, being an adult process, I was looking for a song for her to do. And the Gershwins wrote a song for a musical called Girl Crazy, and it's called Treat Me Rough. And in the movie, it was written for the stage, but in the movie, Mickey Rooney does it with a bunch of girls who are all like 4 feet taller than he is, which was not hard to find because, he was rather petite. And it said, treat me rough, muss my hair, I don't care. And I thought this would be fine. This would be funny for Marie to come out there and sing, treat me rough and all that. And Ira thought said that he loves her. Oh, she's very talented. Let her do it. That's great. So I took it to them and they said, oh no, she can't sing these lyrics. This is terrible. And I had to go back to Ira and say, they won't let her sing the lyrics. They're too adults. He said, well, I'll change a few of them. And I thought to myself, you were what? This is Ira Gershwin. This is Porgy and Bess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went back with the new lyric, which she was happy to do. And they said, oh, no, it's still too much. And I said, perhaps I'm not clear about this. Ira Gershwin has personally rewritten this song. This has never happened in the history of the musical theater. They said, no, sorry, not interested. And I thought this was like, the brick wall I was going up against. So Ira didn't care, but I was personally offended.
Yeah, I'm personally offended.
I was personally offended. I brought another song in that I have two good friends. This is very name droppy, but I've been around forever. Melissa Manchester and Carol Barra Sager had written a song called "Coming from the Rain," and recording it. And I said, "Could I bring it to Marie?" And she said, "Sure, if Marie likes it and sings it. My record's coming out. Couldn't hurt," because Maria wasn't going to record it. Brought that in, and they said, no, she can't sing that because this is about a woman who accepts her husband coming back after an adulterous affair. And I'm looking at the lyric thinking, where does that in there? It's just, whatever happened. Maybe they had a fight. He went out. She said, coming from the rain, it's cozy and warm in here, and I want you back. No, she was not allowed to sing that.
Wow.
So I was really frustrated. So then, finally, I came in with a song that had just broken onto the Hot 100 by Elton John. Don't let the sun go down on me. And I brought that they loved. That they thought, oh, that Elton John, he's wonderful. We loved it, terrific. And so there I was in the recording booth. I'm standing with the network censor, Mrs. Futterman, whose job was very easy on the Osmond Show because they censored everything. She didn't have to lift a finger. And here's Marie out there on the stage. She says, don't let the sun go down on me. And the censor turns to me and says, I see what you got away with here. So America got to watch Marie Osmond imploring someone not to go down on her.
Yup. You can follow us on all the various socials. Our website is whythepodcast.com and has all sorts of additional stories and videos. It's also where you can sign up for our newsletter. We're also on YouTube if you're into that kind of thing. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, because if you don't, we'll call your mother and tell her that she's completely right. You would look so much prettier if you smiled more.
Why the Podcast is part of Mudhouse Media. Today's show was produced by myself and Heidi Hegquist. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing executive producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our graphic designer is Samantha Mustonen. The theme song was performed by the Electrosynth-O-Magnetic Polyphonic Orchestra. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?